And I'm Paul Marshall from OPB. Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler says police mishandled their response to a violent clash between far-right and far-left demonstrators last month. Portland police officers are not subject to the city's vaccine mandate for its employees, and a Clark County, Washington judge has banned protests and rallies within a mile of Vancouver School District property.
So all of the learning gets disrupted. We have to sit down quietly, not make noise, and we were hunkered down in our classrooms for around an hour and a half.
It's Consider This from OPB and NPR. Each Friday, we wrap up the week's news. This week, OPB editor Rob Manning is here to help us catch up.
Support for this podcast comes from OPB members. Become a sustaining member at opb.org. Support also comes from Pacific Source Health Plans, health insurance for Oregonians that strives to put its members first. Learn more at pacificsourcemembersfirst.com. And by Smith Tea Maker, blending craft and creativity to create unique hot and iced teas in Portland, Oregon. Use code CONSIDERTHIS on your first order at smithtea.com.
Rob, this week a Clark County judge banned political protests near Vancouver schools. What is she trying to prevent?
Well, she's trying to avoid more protests like one that happened at the end of last week when several groups showed up, including the Proud Boys. That's the far-right group known for sometimes being violent at demonstrations. That protest was to oppose mandates requiring students and staff to wear masks, and that was last Friday, September 3rd. It caused lockdowns at 3 Vancouver schools. One of the affected schools was Skyview High School, which is where the demonstration happened. That has more than 1,800 students, so we're talking about a disruption to kind of a lot of students. The order from Judge Susan Clark is pretty expansive. It bans protests within a mile of any Vancouver public school, and it would last as long as the mask mandate for schools in the state of Washington is in effect.
Last month, as far-right and far-left protesters clashed in downtown Portland, the police took a hands-off approach, much the same as they did during a similar brawl between the same groups a year ago. Now Mayor Ted Wheeler says they didn't do enough. What lessons does he say he's learned?
So, right, back on August 22nd, the Portland police took a very hands-off approach to these demonstrations involving far-right groups such as, the Proud Boys, as well as at times violent far-left activists associated with Antifa. At first, Mayor Wheeler called the handling of the day a success, arguing, well, there wasn't that much disruption and damage. It wasn't, widespread. But there was gunfire downtown, and there was violence definitely in Northeast Portland. So Wheeler's rosy view just got blasted for days and weeks after the protest happened. And finally, at City Council this past week, he said that it was basically not the right strategy. Here's Ted Wheeler.
That strategy was not the right strategy. I think we can all acknowledge that. I take full responsibility for it.
He said he reached that conclusion after all this public opinion came in, what he called a public outcry, including on the national front, as he put it. And as for what he's going to do differently, I think we're still waiting to find out. He's asked the Police Bureau for an analysis of how it's been handling recent protests. So I guess we'll wait for that to come back and then, see what he proposes the next time there's going to be one of these counter-protest situations.
Portland police officers will not have to abide by the new city vaccine mandate. Why are they exempt?
Yeah, it goes back to what state law says and what Governor Kate Brown's order was related to healthcare workers. And according to the interpretation of city attorneys in Portland, the city's police force falls within the exemption that is part of state law that basically says you can't force health workers and other frontline workers to get vaccinated. So that block goes kind of back into effect. The Portland police have pointed out that hundreds of their officers have actually gotten vaccinated, though, not all of them. I should note that it's not just the city of Portland and its police force, but Multnomah County has reached a similar conclusion. They're not going to require sheriff's deputies, probation, and parole officers to be vaccinated either.
That's Rob Manning. I'm Paul Marshall. Thanks for joining us for Consider This from OPB and NPR. For the latest news from Oregon and Southwest Washington at any time, visit opb.org. And join us next Friday right here for a summary of the biggest news of the week.